Hello. So I got a long comment from Sapper, which I actually rather enjoy. And I thought, well, I can't sleep, so maybe we'll just do kind of a little responsive video thing. And I'll read this out and just kind of talk about it as I go. I found your take interesting. This is in regards to Ahskance Reacts Dev Q&A number 3, which is on the community Discord thing. So I found your take interesting. However, I don't view the answers positively at all. I'm hoping that's the wargaming answers, not mine. But who knows? Most are fairly long in length, but short in detail that folks are interested in. Yeah, I'm assuming that's wargaming answers. Although mine were also long in length. And I completely realized the irony in me rewriting a large comment to point these things out. The answers all had a lack of clarity and brevity. For those that don't know, brevity is kind of like short and to the point, concise. The questions for the 12v12 and subs, most of those points will probably true or basically irrelevant to 95% who read it. Folks don't care about map reconfiguration. Their idea would be just add more spawns. The point about number of ships and balancing could simply be argued with, but most of the time subs won't be shot or interacted that much with. Not to mention the argument about balancing around 12v12 when there are so many reduced numbers modes is laughable. Miscommunication isn't just the we said wrong, slightly untrue thing. But also we said so much, the core message was lost. In this case, a far more effective response would have been, we're currently monitoring this, working on a limited number of subs and destroyers in total per team. So, I have a little additional information on this only because I've seen a little behind the, the cookie jar or whatever. Because there are questions and stuff that are asked and interactions that happen on a community contributor Discord. So I have a little background. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's NDA. But in terms of like conceptual or conceptual use of design or, just kind of like intent. There are basic things that are basic enough that I don't think there's any issue or whatever. So, that's one of the reasons. That's one of the things that I try to add when I'm giving kind of context to a situation. Is if I know a little more, then hey, that's cool. But I can actually, when reading this, the question about 12v12 and subs, most people are just saying, why don't you add more spawns? To an extent, I mean, that kind of makes sense, right? Because if you have, say, a carrier and 11 other surface ships, and right now that kind of works. Well, what if you just bumped it to 14v14 and you stuck 2 more subs in the mix? Well, what the hell? What's the big difference, right? You have just as much surface ship play as you had before. And now you've got 2 little, sneaky subs slinking around doing sneaky sub stuff. That's true, but if right now they're designing their core ship characteristics, the detection sizes around, there's a maximum of 4 destroyers outside of Q dumps that make things weird. Well, their detection areas, if you're thinking of this from a map designer's point of view, map designer's going to be looking at like, how are players intended to see what's in front of them and riff off of it? Because you are literally designing a play space for people to interact with. So, if we think of, I wish I had the name off the top of my head, but there's a map where the left side is very open, the mid has like a weird pinch play, and then the C cap, it's got the little no battleship signs to go on like the 9 and the 10 line, and it looks like there's a triangle island that cuts into C. If you think about that, you could have a destroyer playing mid, you could have a destroyer playing wide, you could have a destroyer playing C, you could have another destroyer playing 9-10 line. 4 destroyers have 4 different places to operate using detection in a way that doesn't necessarily overlap but allows them some freedom of movement while also having freedom to spot. Well, what happens if you suddenly have 4 destroyers plus 2 subs? Now you have 6 spotting directions, which means you have the entire flanks or the entire area is covered because the little channel that runs up between A and B is now covered. You also have maybe some additional recon and stuff. It's like there can be a fundamental change to the way that the stuff interacts. I am not a map designer, but I know this is stuff that they think about, and it could just be that, you know, well, it sounds like a simple change, but if you do that, then that's going to change this angle. That's going to change this spotting position. That's going to change this movement point. That being said, I mean, it's really possible they could just, you know, bump it up to 14v14. As long as the server's going to handle it, who gives a shit? Pretty soon, 2 ships will be dead on both sides anyway, and bam, you're down to 12v12 again. But I think you have to consider it in terms of frontline and cross pressure, and secondly, you also have to consider it in terms of consumables, because part of the way that subs are designed right now is that you've got your magic dive juice, you've got your oxygen energy counter or whatever, right? Well, if radar gets lit off, then you burn the dive juice faster, assuming they're under the water. If hydro gets lit off, you're burning the dive juice faster. All right, cool. So you bring a radar cruiser, you got 3 uses. 4 if you bring the consumable expert or whatever, superintendent, I think it is. That might be fine for an average 2 to 4 DD situation. But is 4 consumables enough for a 6 DD situation? 4 destroyers, 2 subs. Does that start becoming lacking? Does that start causing issues where, yes, it could be useful, but because there are more sneaky ships, then there are more sneaky ships living longer, lasting longer, going further to the late game, requiring more detection consumables to allow a ship that relies on a detection consumable for its viability and power. Does that interact there? Possibly. I haven't tested it. I don't know. There are some ships that don't have those detection things. So, I mean, there's that as well, sure. It's just, the long and the short of it is, it sounds like such an easy fix that you can put it out there and the average person can basically use bar logic. You know, if they're sitting in a bar, man, you know what? I could have this shit fixed in no time. This government stuff, you know, funding this cow fart study. Pfft, man, that saves 2 or 3 million right there. Real quick, I'm solving poverty and shit. Like, it's really easy to bar logic this, where it feels like you're just sitting there sipping a beer thinking about, like, you know what wargaming should do? They should just add it up. This should go 14v14. Yeah, man. It's done. Fixed. Don't have to worry about nothing. Like, it's just, it's so easy to say that, but realistically, there's so much more to it. And if this was an indie game, you know, if this was some little 8-bit nothing or whatever that you buy for $10, sure, maybe, whatever. But this is an international success that spans every continent, potentially, except for Antarctica and whatever. Hell, maybe they have signal too, I don't know. It's just, there's more to consider. There's a lot more to consider. So I don't think you can really just so easily dismiss that. As far as the miscommunication isn't, we just said the wrong / slightly untrue thing when we said that the core message was lost. I think this probably could actually be a response that addresses a few different points in this. I've read it like once, and then I thought, yeah, this is actually kind of cool. I think I'll like do a video response to it. I'll approach this in 2 pieces. So, first off, I'll give you a story, human interest story. All right, so my best friend went to school. He went to art school to become a computer animator. He loves animation. He loves, you know, Bugs Bunny cartoons, loves all kinds of animated anything. Fucking crazy about it. Huge brony, actually. Loves My Little Pony. He's been crazy about that one for years. Anyway, he goes to art school. He does the art school thing. He comes home. I become his first commission. There's a girl I'm fucking crazy about. We've been in a relationship for 6 or 7 months. I thought, hey, this would be cool. I will, you know, I'll buy whatever. I'll buy his services to make a picture of her, but because he likes anthros so much, he can like morph it into, you know, kind of see her as a lion or something. Because I saw her as a lion for whatever reason. I'd like you to draw, you know, my girlfriend as a lion. So he starts asking me about, well, how do you want our eyes to be? And he starts listing off 2 or 3 different versions of eye structure or something, as though there are only 2 or 3 versions of eye structures that exist in the world, but that's what he learned in school. And then as he was doing it, he decided to change it. He think he turned her into a mouse. I don't know. Yeah, and through stuff. Anyway, the long and the short of it is, he finished the picture. He handed the picture to me, and I looked at this and went, this isn't what I asked for. This is the wrong animal. This is a weird representation of the face. This is a whole bunch of stuff that, you know, I gave you what I felt was a fairly clear, straightforward, honestly very basic idea of, I'd like my girlfriend to be, you know, redone as this whatever animal portrait as a gift to her, and here are some generic things in responses to his basic questions at the outset. He, on the other hand, had a degree, had a lot of time doing this, years spent doing art, and decided to run with his instincts, and instead it came out with something else, and ultimately I tore it in half in front of him, and he was very angry. But why do I say this? Because artistry is a very specialized skill. I mean, there are some people that do it one way, there's some people that do it another way. You could have hour-long discussions about color theory and shapes and concepts and all these other things that one artist can transmit so much information to another artist. And yet, how do you convey this to a person that is used to seeing pictures on the internet? Maybe draws better than a stick figure, but I mean, would never draw something for like comic book. But I mean, they can draw figures and shapes and pictures, and they can, if they played the thing where you draw pictures and your teammate has to guess it real quick or something, like they might be great at that because they can do basic suggestive concepts and ideas and transmit that knowledge through their pictures. But when it comes to color theory, shapes, background interaction, all that shit, they're not studied. They don't know. Why do I say all this? Because a game designer literally spends years, potentially decades, not only figuring all this shit out by putting it into implementation and fucking failing. They go to school for this. They watch lectures about this. They read books about this. They learn from other game people that have learned all this shit. Like that's part of the gig. And it's not uncommon for somebody that's lived as an artist or lived as a game dev or lived as a mechanic to have problems trying to interact with the average person that's like, well, I play games. I know about games. I played games for decades. Fuck, I game every day. Sure, but there's a lot of back-end bullshit that as a gamer you never had to think about before. Because if the game sucked, you didn't play it. If they missed all that background bullshit, you didn't buy it. Or you bought it and thought, this sucks, and you went over and you played a different game. And honestly, the other games probably did think about all that background bullshit that you may not have spent the time figuring out. So, alright, so there was my story, kind of where it went to. Well, what the fuck is the point? Because it's always nice to have a point, right? Wargaming probably needs to invest in some kind of like PR, either a firm or literally just have a PR position. Because honestly, there are engineers that work in corporations, and engineers talk engineer. Like that's what they do. They talk the engineer language. And then you have users that talk, well, normal human. And they don't necessarily translate very well. So it's very common for, you know, said engineering company that makes programs for people or designs machinery for people to have a middleman, somebody that derps around in the middle that translates human to engineer and engineer to human. And it really does feel like wargaming doesn't have that. It feels like when you ask a question to a developer, there's a developer that answers. And there's 2 issues with that. 1, they're a dev, so they're speaking dev speak. And 2, it can be a language problem. You know, you have a non-native speaker translating into another language, and it's going from engineer to human. I don't think you can be surprised when some of this information doesn't, translate. Like, it just doesn't. Whereas you have somebody, I think if you had a middleman that could translate all this and give the additional background data and whatever, maybe it would be better. Like me, I'm autistic, so I also have issues with data communication sometimes. And I can be extremely blunt, I guess, or very basic in what I'm communicating. And it can often be so basic that, frankly, somebody else who speaks human, right, assumes that this is so basic there has to be more here. No, there's really not. It's pretty direct. No, it can't be this direct. No, it is, really, I swear. Like, when I moved out, my mom, her parent had died, and she wanted to attend the funeral, but she was really scared because, hey, my son is moving out for the first time, and it's like, Mom, I'm gonna put my shit in the car, I'm gonna drive to the new place, I'm gonna take my shit out of the car, and then I'm gonna live there. It's okay. And she was sitting there panicking, like, you just don't understand the gravity of this situation, there is so much more. Mom, this is what I'm gonna do. And I realize in that case, maybe the role of the dev and the average person is reversed, but it's like there can be issues here where sometimes that translator would work out really well. Ultimately, I went to my dad and said, I have this. You need to convince her so that she can go to this funeral. I'll be okay. And he took care of it. So, hey. Anyway, moving on. Yay, rambly stuff, rawr. Balance questions were ignored. Ugh, come on, thing. Stop doing that. Yep, they basically said at the time the kiddo was fine, and then they changed it the next patch. At the time, a simple "we'll look into it" would have sufficed and saved their bacon. In this QnA, their answer is ambiguous at best. When a really simple "yes," we ended up reevaluating kiddo after the issue was raised in the last QnA, and subsequently made changes, would have saved them. The answer they gave just seemed like they didn't want to admit fault, and saying "we do listen, see." One, it could be a different person that's doing this dev QnA that's not familiar with QnA number 2. So, dude from QnA number 2 that gave you erroneous information that ended up being proven false might be on vacation, might be doing a different project right now. So, rather than expecting QnA number 2 dude to sit there and go like, hey, I fucked up, I didn't know. I mean, like, realistically, if you extend the benefit of the doubt, it could have just been somebody else. They don't know. This also would be solved by having, like, a dedicated PR/communication person. And that's not to say that they don't have one, but if they do have one, I think they need to use them a little more aggressively. But in general, like, I'm gonna be honest, this doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, as a user, as a customer, as a person that plays the game, is it nice for the devs to say, actually, we looked back at it, we did notice there's a problem, thank you for bringing this to our attention? Sure, I mean, that makes you as a customer feel important and special. I was heard, I was listened to, I was right, and they acted on it, and now the game is better. Sure, but to an extent, take your ego out of it. I mean, it's not just this one person or these 10 people in the North American region that, oh man, they saved fucking wargaming. There is an entire country or entire continent which speaks, Russian, Slavic, Cyrillic languages, etc. The Russian server. Then there's Southeast Asia, all the different people from all the different countries that exist there, all the different languages that exist there. European server, North American server. You think it's 10 people that had this idea? 10 people that cracked the code, that figured this out, and wargaming needs to go, we feel you, bro. odds are, there are probably 10,000 or 20,000 people that have said something in some form or fashion, some language or another. And at the same time, everybody saying something may have literally meant different things. Oh, the kid's guns need to be buffed. Oh, the kid's detection is a problem. Oh, the kid's health is wrong. Oh, the kid is too sluggish. There's all kinds of people that give you different feedback. And while, yes, you could have somebody generically give you a humble pie answer and say, we heard you, we appreciate it, and we think we made the game better for it. Honestly, who gives a shit? Like, if I'm talking to J.R.R. Martin about the Song of Ice and Fire, if I'm talking to him about Game of Thrones, do I need him to acknowledge that fan feedback really just chef's kissed it? Or if I'm asking questions about, where he came up with stuff, how he's a writer, the lore, the background, how he came to this conclusion, like, you have the opportunity to talk to a master writer. And it's just like, what are you going to focus on? You focus on something basic, or do you focus on the fact that you've got basically a master artisan? Like, if you met Bob Ross, you're going to sit there asking about, like, well, I suggested you draw a cat. Whatever. Like, there's just, I don't know. I get, it could be a miscommunication for me. It could be something where I'm just not seeing it. Or maybe I'm just a fanboy for game devs. Like, literally, it could be. Because I've played games ever since I was a kid. I went to school for game development. Well, game design, same thing-ish. Didn't finish it, changed my major, do different stuff now. But still, like, I don't know, I'm fascinated by it. So I'm going to be honest, if it comes down to a benefit of the doubt, I'm probably giving a game developer more of a benefit of a doubt than I should. I recognize that bias. But I've said before and I'll say again, this is a game that's played literally across the face of the earth 24 hours a day by thousands, if not millions of people. It is one fuck of a success story. And the difference between somebody getting angry about these guns should fire 0.3 seconds faster versus 0.1 seconds faster, or you over-nerfed these torps by 2,000 damage. There is so much fucking game that to look at such a small thing and just like explode it up into a huge whatever, there's gotta be some perspective to it. Anyway. And the same thing happens repeatedly. Big long-winded answers that have the effect of sounding like bullshit. Brevity to the core point in a positive and non-spin type tone would be much better. Again, I think if they had a PR person, if they had somebody that was legit, like, they took their questions and answers, this PR person, so to speak, sat down with devs, got their answer, went out, wrote everything, this is going to be our response, took it back to the devs, had them check it, does this still vibe with everything you told me? Yeah, cool. Then took that response to kind of like some people in the testing group, say, some more average players, or maybe some players that are in the know/skill, showed it to them. What do you think? Run these ideas, basically error checking the communication, and then bringing it out to the public. Sure. But if you have we want to ask questions to the devs and the devs respond, can you really be mad that they're not going through that process? That they haven't added 5 extra steps so that every word they give you is so machine perfect that it's just fucking flawless? Like, do you want that? Do you want a business corporate statement that's going to give you a refined piece of data, or would you rather just be able to have a conversation with somebody? And frankly, which one's easier? Which one's more illuminative? Having an actual conversation with somebody and just seeing what they say. Although there is an issue because it's Russian to English, so I mean, there could be some language shit. But I didn't really find any translation issues, I guess, when I read it. It seemed pretty straightforward. The Zhao isn't a pretty poor, to be honest. I would love Zhao buffs. I do admit she's okay. It's just she's nothing like she once was, thanks to scope/power creep. Saying that she's one of the most popular cruisers is a shit way to respond to player concerns about balance. I actually saw something recently which probably has to be taken into account. And by recently, I mean like within the last few hours, which is if you're thinking about a free-to-play game cycle, you have a majority of people that have played for a long time. There's a lot of new players, etc. So new players are experiencing all the content as new, and established players have already ground new content, or the old content. So maybe the Japanese cruiser lines, they've gone through, they did all the cruiser lines. Hey, I love cruisers. Awesome. That shit's done. Well, where do you put your dev time? Do you come out with new cruisers, which are going to affect new players and old players, and adjust and alter the meta of the game by the inclusion of new stuff, which might kick things around and change stuff and muddy up the water and kick up some dust and stuff? Or do you sit down and have a good think about all the established lines and tweaking this and that? Realistically, EVE Online had kind of a way of dealing with this, and they recognized balance is important. They recognized that balance has to shift and shake around to keep things fresh, but they were so busy doing other stuff that it's extremely hard to just say, we're going to make a balance team. So they ended up making a balance team of, I think, 2 people. And those 2 people had other jobs. So it was more like once every 3 months, you know, these 2 people are going to take X amount of hours out of the day over the course of 2 or 3 months to kind of look at stuff, test some changes, feel how it goes, kick it up to the live server, shake stuff up a little bit. So realistically, could they have 1 or 2 devs that kind of like derp around with some of the other ships? Maybe we could kick up the Zao a little. But like, what do we do to make the Zao better? Change its gun angles? Is that the difference? Is that suddenly the reason that the Zao is now amazing? Increase its pen? Is that the reason the Zao is now amazing? Increase its fire chance, increase its firing rate, increase its torp volatility. Like, you could tweak stuff, you could alter stuff, but if the ship works, maybe it's not the best ship, but if it works and people can play it and succeed in playing it, it's not a 40% win rate dumpster dash ship. It's not terrible. It's usable. It's weaker than other stuff. Is that so bad? For instance, I think if you look at like tier 7 or tier 6, there are going to be 5, 6, 10 ships that pop out. Oh, these ships are amazing. You got to love these ships. Which by the nature of that means that another 8, 10, or 15 ships are not as amazing. Some of them might even suck. Well, tier 10, it could be that there are some amazing ships, and then there are other ships that are not. Well, you might think, well, tier 10 is the pinnacle of every line. Every tier 10 should be viable. Every tier 10 should matter. Doesn't have to. Can be. I don't know. Will they dick with it? Will they change it? Maybe. I think people keep talking about Zao, and I know the devs are aware of it because the European broadcasting team or whatever made jokes regarding Maltese Knight. I guess he has an account, Test Ship Zao or something. So, I mean, they're aware of it. Are they going to get to it? I have no idea. Obviously, it wasn't included as like, yes, we are working on the Zao to buff this. So, if it happens, I wouldn't expect it to be anytime soon, but I'm sure they could tweak it somehow, maybe. Then with Dutch airstrikes, again, a simple, we want to create more dynamic variety between lines than those that exist within basic specs like damage and reload, so we designed ship lines with unique consumables or new types of traits to achieve this. I mean, that's what they said. It's probably phrased, you know, more eloquently than what they said, but that's what they said. Maybe that's, again, where this, like, translation thing comes in. That's also, you might, so when I did this reaction, when I make this video, and I reacted to the 2010 summit, for instance, part of that was to translate because I study this shit as a hobby. not just I play games as a hobby, but like I study game design as a hobby. I study mechanics as a hobby. It's one of the reasons why I make all the fucking lessons videos and playlists and stuff. I'm interested in mechanics and how the coding would work or how things would interact. Like it's fascinating to me. So I don't know. See, I read this natively, but maybe that's not the words they used, but that's exactly what I understood it to mean. So I think it's just, again, maybe it's a PR thing, whatever. Basically, they're misreading their audience really badly and muddying the responses with too much. They amplify their reputation for miscommunication. Yeah, I mean, I'll agree that if they're giving you engineer speak and the average person is like, what the fuck is this? Yeah, by the very nature of that, that is the essence of miscommunication. They're coming from point Z, you're sitting at point A, there's a whole bunch of shit in the middle that's just kind of getting jumped over. Fuck. That's miscommunication. But there are some aspects of the miscommunication thing that, like, this is such a big buzzword right now. Little white mouse, miscommunication. We wanted this, we were doing this, but they didn't know, but then this, we sent information, they didn't listen to it. That's parts miscommunication, that's part negligence. Because they were trying to give help us, please. This is all the information you need to understand this, and people were ignoring it. And I can tell you that people behind the scenes were fucking pissed. Might have taken them a while to figure out why they needed to be fucking pissed, but they did get fucking pissed. So there was that. As far as other miscommunications regarding like this event or this ship or this whatever, I don't know. Maybe, again, I think I've probably said at least 15 times, if not 20 something by now, if they hire like a PR firm, or if they literally hire somebody to have like public relations department of the company or something, maybe they just do it for World of Warships as opposed to like wargaming as a whole. Maybe they just need something that's really like lives in this space. And not only is it, you know, a single point of interaction, but they have like a team that's multilingual so that they can all farm it out to all the different nation branches or something. Because I think right now, it might be that they have a generalized communication source that goes out to each of the branches, the North American branch, the European branch, the whatever, and then they try to make use of that information the best they can. Maybe? I don't know. I suppose if they wanted to be more open with their processes, that might actually, well, I mean, it would certainly help the customer base to know what the fuck is going on, but at the same point, like, me knowing why this something is fucked up doesn't mean that it's not fucked up. It means I might be able to offer solutions, I guess. I think realistically, they just, you might have to hire somebody. Like if you want to have a successful restaurant, you hire an amazing cook, because otherwise your food's not fucking great enough. It's just average food. You need somebody that's going to make the product palatable and interesting to an audience to draw them in. And PR is a part of, I guess, free-to-play gaming, and maybe that's just really causing an issue right now. Anyway, it's 3:15. I probably rambled for quite a long time, as I do, because I do. But I just thought this was pretty interesting, and I enjoy Sapper's comments, so I thought, hey, I'll record a thing to the Sapper thing, and woot. Alright, so, good night.